Okay. Hey there, Algebra 2. Today we're talking about 5.1 joint and inverse variations. We're on a new chapter. If you want to know about your tests, I just have to sit down and grade them. So I'll probably grade them during the Zoom session today if we do some work. Um, and I'm happy to answer any questions from it too, if you have any. But let's just go on to today's lesson. 5.1 joint and inverse variation. So what does that mean? What does that do? What do we have to do? So 5.1 joint and inverse variations, what we're going to do is talk about what they are first. So what is a joint variation? What is a inverse variation? And I'm going to give you an example of each. So a joint variation is simply when one variable, let's say x, and another variable equals y, when they're together, there's some number, a, that has a relationship between them. Sometimes that a is just 1, so we don't really see it. But very important, whenever x goes up, y goes up. Whenever x goes down, y also goes down. So they're joint in the sense that they go the same direction. So if x goes up, y goes up. If x goes down, y goes down. So let's talk about what that means. And there's some ratio between x and y, and that's that letter A. So let's just talk about like a example. Let's say I don't know, I like pizza. So you have a pizza and it costs you some amount of money. If I buy one pizza, it costs me $2. If I buy 2 slices of pizza, it costs me $4. If I bought 10 slices of pizza, it costs me $20. If I somehow, so that'd be like -3, right? I sold 3 pizza slices, I would have not lost 6 pizza slices. I guess $6. So the variation here, is the ratio between the pizza and the money. So the variation, or our A in this case, is simply 2. So A in this one is 2x equals y. For every pizza I get, I have to spend $2. If I sold pizza, that'd be like a -3 pizzas. I make $6 in this case. Maybe I messed up the negatives and positives in terms of like how it should look like. But basically, the concept is the more pizza I buy, the more money I have to pay. The less pizza I buy, the less money I have to pay. Okay? Or lose, you can even think of that. So that's a joint. As the pizza goes up, the money goes up. As the pizza goes down, the money goes down. So let's go to inverse. So inverse is when joint is together, inverse is opposite sides. So they're going separate. So one go up, one goes down. So how that looks like is that your A is being divided by x in this case equals y. So your A is being divided by x equals y. And what's a case like that? Let me think. Oh, let's say like how many pictures you have on your phone versus how much memory you have left on your phone, okay? So that's an inverse relationship. So what does that mean? Well, let's say your memory is at like 100%. That means you have 0 pictures on your phone. If you had, instead of pictures, let's use what's more relevant. Let's use batteries and use. So the more you use your phone, the more battery you have. So if you never use your phone, your battery should technically be at 100. Yeah, I know your batteries sometimes die if you don't even turn it on, but if you use your battery for the whole day, let's say, and you have a really nice phone, or you got that phone with the extra like bigger like case or something, you have 50% left, If you use it for 2 days, maybe you have 0% left. Maybe you use it for like a half a day, you still have 75% left. So notice here that the variation is as the more I use it, the less battery I have. But the less I use it, the more battery I have. So that's why they're going in separate directions. That's the inverse and the increase. And part of your homework I'm going to ask you is to give me one example of your own example of a joint variation and your own example of an inverse variation. But not only we're going to talk about what they are, let's actually talk about how do we identify it. So I'm just going to rewrite this, and if you do take notes, I would recommend you write this too. A joint is ax equals y, and a inverse is a over x equals y. okay? Technically, it could also be this. I just want to make this clear. Where the a is next to the y, or the a is next to when the a is next to the y. So technically it could be either one. Usually we really like when y is by itself. But both of these work. So if you're going to copy something down, copy this down. Okay, so there's going to be two types of problems here. First off, you're going to tell me from the information I give you, is it a joint, is it an inverse, or is it a neither? And I have to show you what a neither is also. So I'm going to show you a very basic joint. 3x equals y. Let's look at that. Well, that looks like this. So that's a joint right here. So that's J for joint, okay? What happens if it looks like this? 3x plus 6 equals y. Here's my issue. You cannot have a plus or a minus in these joint or inverse variations. You cannot have a plus or minus. So in this case, this is an N for neither. You cannot have a plus or minus. And I'm going to tell you that right now. And as soon as you see a plus or minus, you already could know that it's going to be a neither, okay? Let's do this. 3 divided by x equals y. Well, hey, that's divided by the variable, so that has to be neither. Or that has to be an inverse, I'm sorry. So you look at this and you're like, Mr. Tobel, that's kind of duh. No duh. It's literally, you just match it. Oh, okay, then, you're going to insult me, and then, I'm going to be a little upset. So let me give you this then. So xy equals 15. And you're like, wait a second, Mr. Tobel. The x and the y is on the same size. What do we do? Well, that's a good question. In our joint and inverse variation tests, we have it where x and y is separate, or on separate sides of the equal sign. So the best thing to do is to move either the x or the y to the other side of the equal sign. Now this is x times y, so you have to think, what's the opposite of x times y? Well, it's x divided by y, or I should say y divided by x. So what I'm going to do on both sides is divided by x here. Well, x divided by x completely disappears. The same number disappears. And what you're left with is y equals 15 over x. At this point, you say, oh, Mr. Tobel, it's back to easy again. It looks like this one on the top right. So that one is an inverse, okay? So you could have different scenarios where they don't give you to it x equals y. So you have to do a little thinking and say, oh, I have to move the x over. Let's try another one. Y divided by x equals 10. Okay. So I'm going to times x here, and I'm going to times x here. Why did I times x? Because y divided by x is happening. So I want to get the x to the other side, so I have to do the opposite. Since it's y divided by x, I have to do times x. Scribble this out, and then I get y equals 10x. All right? So y equals 10x. Hey, that matches my joint over here. So that's a joint, so J. Like that. Okay. Is there any other type from this situation? Oh, something like this. X plus y equals 10, let's say. Well, I want x and y separated, so I'm going to subtract x here. I'm going to subtract x here. So I got y equals, I'll write it as negative x plus 10. But here's my issue. If it was just negative x, you actually would have a joint variation, because it would just be a negative 1, visible negative 1. But you have the plus 10, and the plus 10 is a no-go. We have no pluses or minuses in this situation. I don't like that. And when you see a plus or a minus in that situation, you could put down N for neither. I think I'm going to actually ask you to, well, nah, you could just write the letter. So N for neither, okay? So maybe I should just extend this. You could put neither. And you could be like something like y equals x plus or minus some number a. Okay? So that's your neithers. No pluses, no minuses, okay? So that's the first type of question. That will be questions 3 to 10, I believe, on your homework. And then let's talk about your second set of questions. All right, so I'm going to just rip this out from the homework to help you guys out and talk about it. So there's 3 parts that are happening in the instruction of the homework. The instructions are very important in this homework. The first thing it says, x and y varies inversely. So go back to the thing you wrote earlier and see what varies inversely is. If you don't, you should at least remember y equals a over x. So we know for a fact y equals a over x, okay? The second part of the instruction says this, and I'm looking right at the page. Use the given values to write an equation relating x and y. So what are the given values? They're different for each question. So for number 12, x is 5, y is 4. So it's asking you, hey, please make the equation where x is 5 and y equals 4. We've done this back in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, where we are given the points and we have to find the equation. But now it's even easier because all we have to do is find this little letter here, a. So that's our job. Our first step is to find a. How do we do that? I guess I will call it the second step because the first step is to set up the inversely. So step 1 is going to be y equals a over x. So first step is to set up your equation with variables. Step 2 is to plug in the variables you know. So I know y is 4 equals a over 5, and x is 5, okay? So second step, I just did it, plug in what you know. Step 3, solve for a. How do we solve for a? I need to get a by itself. So I'm going to times by 5 and then times by 5 over here. And I'll put these instructions in the description of the homework so I don't have to write them here. I'll just write it in the Google Classroom. So a equals 20. And I'm boxing it, but we're not done because there's a third part to the question in the homework, okay? But we just found a. So let me rewrite the equation as y equals 20 over x, okay? Because now I know what a is, I can find any x or any y. So step 4 is going to be plug in the value to find y. So in the instructions, you have to look in the actual bold text of the instructions. It says find y when x equals 3. So find y when x equals 3. So I'm going to do y equals 20 divided by 3. Now 20 divided by 3, for me, you could leave as a fraction. I'm sure the books turned it into a decimal, so I'll just turn it to 6.6 repeating, or 6.67 they might have said. I don't know how the book would have written it. But this right here is your answer. I take my x and plug it in. I'm going to do another example, okay? Actually, I'm not just going to do another example. Let me do another problem for your homework. Let's do number 13 together. And we'll do the same steps. Whoop, I didn't want my thing to fall down. Yeah, I'll just clear this up. All right. So with the editing, I already finished. X equals 1, y equals 9. We're doing the same type of problem. Part 1, set up the equation. It says inversely, so we're going to set it up inversely. So that's y equals a over x. Step 2, plug in what we know. We know 9 equals a over 1. Step 3, solve. Well, times 1 doesn't even change the value. So 9 equals a. That's pretty important. Let's box that. Okay? With that information, we're going to go and say, what is my equation? Y equals 9 over x. I just want to make clear, you might ask, okay, Mr. Tobel, we already have y and x. Why did we put it back here, y and x? This is an equation. Just like how we had a linear equation, just like we used it, we're going to find something new. And what we're going to find is what happens here when x equals 3. So I'm going to take my 3 and plug it into here. Y equals 9 divided by 3. Well, what's 9 divided by 3? Good job. That's 3. So 3 equals y. So your answer in this question is 3. Okay? The last question was a decimal. I think it was 6.66 or 6.7, depending on the round. This right here, your answer is 3. A nice whole clean number, okay? So I just did 12 and 13 for you. I think I'm going to give you 14 to... Maybe I'll just give you 14 and 15, or maybe I'll give you a worksheet one. I don't know. But I hope you have good luck with this. Again, I'll have a Zoom session. If you want questions, that's fine. And what else I got for you? And if you have questions or tests, that's fine. I just haven't graded them yet. And I apologize for that. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, guys.